The Vegas Eternal here at the halfway mark of 2023 are making some major changes to their roster in an attempt to get their team back on the right track. Just moments ago, they announced the departures of Vulcan, Lucamino, and Malthol, and in return, they have signed Korean Contenders players Irony, 2U, and Knife. This is an absolute massive shakeup that could really change the Vegas Eternals' future, or bare minimum, make them a more respectable and interesting team for the rest of the regular season. Given how things were going and the track they were on, obviously some changes needed to be made if they wanted to avoid some colossal level embarrassment and perhaps be the third winless team in the history of the Overwatch League. Outside of a few matches here and there, the Vegas Eternal looked lifeless at times and were easily the worst team in the league, and it wasn't even close. Even the LA Valiant, who also went winless in the first half of 2023, were even better than they were. Vegas with their core had absolutely no hope, maybe outside of the Valiant, so these are some very warranted changes. It's disappointing for some people because there's this whole thing of trying to develop your talent over time, but I think their time has just about ran out. The Vegas Eternal core has lasted for almost 2 seasons now for the most part, so you need to make a shakeup if you're still struggling to win any games at all. It's very unfortunate on the side of Vegas and their management because they can't seem to get stable and keep one roster for a long period of time. But when a team still hasn't won a game basically since last year around this time, I think it kind of warrants making these big changes. It was obvious this team, with their current circumstances and that situation, were not going to improve much, and they weren't going to be world beaters, so you've got to make that tough choice. This is a situation where you're backed into a corner, and you really have no other choice. And if we're being honest, the 3 guys that they released were rather expendable. I maybe would have liked to see them potentially hold on to Lucamino because he was pretty decent for them overall. He played with some heart for sure, but definitely not someone you couldn't replace. And then with Vulcan and Malthol, they have consistently been getting criticism within the community. They have been one of the bigger weak points of this team. So them going seemed pretty natural. With what's on the line right now in terms of trying to avoid absolute catastrophic results, you gotta do what you gotta do. And if it means that some of these better guys are willing to take minimum contracts for you, then you just gotta go for it. The fact that Vegas were even able to make other signings to begin with is pretty awesome for them, just considering their very low budget. And for the guys they got, it's some serious bang for your buck. Knife, 2U, and Irony were all solid players in Korean Contenders, and they all looked relatively good in the Eastern knockouts as well. They've got a decent amount of upside. They've all been waiting for their Overwatch League opportunity, so even though they're on a minimum salary, they're gonna give it everything they got. Vegas might just be a temporary destination for them as they look to further their career and establish themselves firmly within the Overwatch League scene. This is where they can draw the eyes of teams and management and all those guys moving into the next season and onward, so they're gonna give it all they've got. They will leave their hearts out there, and I can guarantee you that. Just going down the line of these replacements, 2U versus Vulcan is like night and day, you know? 2U, while not a world beater, has already proven that he is Overwatch League level in the past. He's played for Seoul Dynasty. Some people argue he should have been in the league in the first place this season, so he's a relatively good pickup. He has shown that he can be an Overwatch League veteran and a solid starting tank player. Now, is it ideal to have him be your solo tank? Not necessarily, but Vegas aren't really left with much choice just because of their budget constraints. And if you are in that kind of situation, you kind of just have to go with what works the best for you, what's the best available, and 2U is one of the best pickups they could have made. He's shown he has a very strong ability on all of the off-tank characters in the game. His Winston, while not fantastic, is obviously better than Vulcan's. He's improved over time on that role. He's just a good all-around player who's been wanting to prove himself, and I think he'll play pretty well for Vegas. Where things get better though for Vegas is going from Malthol to Knife. Like, if you think that going from Vulcan to 2U is a big difference, this is basically a world-beating difference. Knife has shown so much promise over the last couple of months on O2 Blast, demonstrating a strong tracer amongst a really solid flex DPS pool overall, and he has a strong desire to win. This guy has been waiting for his opportunity to make it here, and he's gonna make the most of it, that is for sure. This guy is an explosive talent with so much potential, and if developed correctly, he can be a star player in the Overwatch League. Knife is definitely the new acquisition you want to keep the closest eye on, but definitely not the only guy, because Irony going in for Luke Mino is also a decent upgrade. Not one that makes you go, wow, Vegas Eternal just won the lottery, but still an upgrade nonetheless. For those who remember, Irony was on the Hangzhou Spark last year and was suffering from some confidence issues, but since leaving the Hangzhou Spark, he has had a bit of a career revival, so to speak, moving into O2 Blast, looking a lot better, building up that confidence and that consistency, and now he just feels like a totally different player who is a lot more league ready than what we saw 1 year prior. And when you combine all of these new acquisitions into one big centerpiece, it makes Vegas Eternal feel like they have something to work with now. There is an actual core. There is true talent that can compete and carry them to potential victories, or at least more competitive sets. I'm liking it. I really don't have anything bad to say. These guys aren't the greatest players in the entire world, but they're obviously going to make a weak Vegas team like this noticeably better. However, as great as these new pickups are, we have to approach this situation cautiously, and I say that for a few reasons. For starters, none of these Korean players, at least I believe, have played with an English-speaking roster before. Something you have to keep in mind is that both Dove and Rack Attack are still on this Vegas roster, so there is some serious adjusting to do from both aspects, from both sides, the English speakers and the Koreans. They have to find a way to intertwine here at the mid-season without any sort of previous chemistry. That is a pretty big challenge right there. It's not like these guys met up during the offseason and have had a lot of time to build all of this stuff up. They are getting thrown at each other and hoping to have something stick to the wall really suddenly, just a few weeks essentially. It hasn't been all that long since the Vegas Eternal went on their break. It's been like a month at most, so this is tough. This is going to be quite the adjustment. The second issue that you have to keep in mind is that in all likelihood, these Korean players, at least for now, should be playing from home. I don't see why they wouldn't be. I doubt that they have visas set up, and we all know that the visa process can take a very, very long time, so I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even make it to America, period, this year. So now you have to factor in large ping like 180 plus, along with that time zone differential. That is a lot of stress and disadvantages being put on your Korean players. We saw how Fielder was able to manage that back in the day, but he is a legend first off, and second off, now you have 3 players that have to try and cope with this. There's a lot of challenges that are facing them right now. This is a major uphill battle that they have to try and climb, and it's probably going to take some time. I highly doubt that everything's going to look good right from the start. In all likelihood, it's going to take a lot of games. They're not going to have it all pieced together right at the start. And with their current outlook right now, I feel like they're either going to have to wait for their matchup with the Valiant, or maybe taking advantage of a middling team at the end of this season. Otherwise, I still don't know if the Vegas Eternal will get a win on the board for the first time in like 365 days. I seriously don't think just because they got more talent that they're automatically going to have everything figured out. It just doesn't seem likely with all of the factors that are currently going against them. I like what Vegas are doing, and I think they'll get better as time goes on, but right now, I think that we can't have too high of expectations or we're going to be very disappointed. But hey, for any of my Vegas fans still out there, you managed to get better. Finally, you got 3 solid Korean players, and you kept Dove and Rack Attack, who I honestly don't mind being here. Maybe you could have replaced Rack Attack, but clearly he showed that he is still valuable, as everybody had to fight for their spot during the Vegas trials to come back. Clearly, Dove and Rack Attack showed enough. So good on both of them for making it here. Rack Attack is probably a leader of some kind, maybe he'll gel well with Irony, and Dove is pretty self-explanatory. If there was one guy you wanted to keep if you're a Vegas fan, it is obviously him. Of all players on the old roster, he was the only guy showing any sort of fight during every single matchup. The only guy that looked alive, like he wanted to win, showing any sort of semblance of star power. He was the guy. And now with a better team around him, his play could elevate to an even higher level, and I think that him and Knife, if they figure it out, could be a pretty good combo. I'm not exactly sure what happens from here for the Vegas Eternal, but I'm happy. I'm happy that they actually decided to do something, rather than sitting on their butts and watching this destruction play out before our very eyes. They're trying to get better, and they deserve some credit for that. but one can't help but wonder if it just came too late. Let me know what you think about these new Vegas moves down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to stay up to date with all Overwatch League news, and trust me, there is a lot more stuff coming, definitely hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if you're new. I've been ATP, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.